Hello, hello. Hello, guys. Hope you're well. If you could just check that you can see me and you can hear me, that would be great. And I'm going to watch this on the screen here. So if someone could just, yeah, in the chat room, if you could just let me know that you can see me, you can see Ableton. Actually, let's play a clip in Ableton. If you could just let me know you can hear that as well, that'd be great. Okay, all good. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to ITP, Introduction to Production, Ableton Live. I'm going to be your instructor. This is our first masterclass together. So today I'm going to keep things very, very simple and just have a quick run through. You know, not all the features. That's a bit of a over exaggeration. I'm going to have a very brief run through of where everything is in Live, just to kind of a quick glance over it, you know, where you can find things and what things do. Very rough overview. Also, I'm going to talk about Live and why personally I think it's great, and you know, what made it such a revolutionary bit of software and why you know, it's become so popular today. So let's start. Let's start by looking at Live. Here we go, Live 10. So the first thing that I want to say is, you know, Live has come a very, very long way in the last, well, probably 15 years now, really. And I've been using Live since pretty much the beginning. I think version 2 or version 3 was the first version that I had. And back in those days, it was just a audio loop player, really. You couldn't do MIDI on it at all. You couldn't, you know, do a lot of the things you can do now. And now it's kind of grown over the years into a fully functioning DAW. And in recent times, you know, in the last 5 years, I've seen pretty much all of my friends come over from whatever other DAW they were using and you know, jump onto Live. It's really, really powerful nowadays. But you know, once you get the workflow and you get your head around it, it's very, very intuitive as well, and it's a lot of fun to use. Now, there's a couple of things which really made Live stand out from the crowd when it was first released, and you know, in my opinion, that's what gave it such a you know, head start, and you know, that's why it overtook so many other DAWs that were around at the time, and it's come on to become, you know, it's become the beast it is today. The first thing was this, you know, where it gets its Live name from, and we're looking at it now. It's a session view. Now, before Ableton, you really had a couple of options of how you were going to arrange your electronic music. You had hardware and hardware sequencers and hardware samplers and hardware drum machines and synths with sequencers on. And what you used to do is you used to sync them all up via MIDI, press play, and then you would just kind of jam stuff out live, you know, muting stuff on your mixing channel, triggering patterns, that kind of thing. Or you had the computer way, which was a lot more linear. You were putting blocks together on a screen in a linear fashion to create your track, and it wasn't live. Let's just say it wasn't something you'd do on the fly. It was something you had to think about and put together. Now, what Ableton did, it gave you the opportunity to put things together in very much the way you would with a piece or lots of pieces of hardware. And that's where the session view came from. So you can kind of think of the session view as lots. Each one of these little slots here can be a virtual drum machine, a virtual synthesizer, a loop, an audio sample, and you can run them all together in a run them live, mute one, trigger other ones, and that kind of stuff. So you are in this page pretty much having almost unlimited software version of lots and lots of different bits of hardware playing together. So for example, see what loops I've got here. I don't think I've got many plugged in at the moment, but look, let's go for the clips here. I could grab this kit here. I could put another kit in there. Grab a kit in there with clipping already, and they're all running together in a sequence. But I could stop one here, I could stop that one using the stop button and just have that one playing, or I could build separate scenes, which is everything which is horizontally, and they'll play together there. And I can build scenes and trigger them. So it brings this very live approach to putting together electronic music, but on a computer and with the power of a computer. So rather than having to buy, unlimited, or lots and lots of hardware and lots of samplers, you now had this power to, throw all this stuff into Ableton and jam with it. Now that was the first thing that really made it something unique. The second thing was that it had this thing called warping. And warping is, what it boils down to, is automatic time stretching. And what you're doing when you're time stretching a sample is you're changing the length of the audio without changing the pitch. Now before you had time stretching, if you wanted to pitch up or speed up a sample or slow a sample down, you'd have to pitch it up, which sounds the same as when you speed up a tape or a record deck or an old sampler. When you speed it up, the pitch gets higher and higher. When you slow it down, the pitch gets lower and lower. Now, somewhere in the early 90s, someone came up with this idea of time stretching. And what that means is you're basically taking a sample, chopping it up into lots of different pieces or grains, and adding grains in to slow it down or taking them away to speed it up. So it's this clever computer algorithm that allows you to change the speed of your samples without changing the pitch. Obviously it's not perfect and you get some kind of unwanted audible effects from that. But that's something, like I said, that was around in the early to mid 90s, and it was quite common. It wasn't that unusual. But the way that it used to work is you would have your sampler and you would go and, you'd have to go and work out the difference in tempo. So first thing you'd need to know was the original BPM of your clip, and then you'd have to know how much you wanted it speeded up by. So if it was 10%, you'd have to type in that percentage. So you'd want it 110%. If you wanted it 10% faster, type that in, go away, make yourself a cup of tea, make yourself dinner, and if you were lucky, when you came back, it would have processed it and got it in time. Now, as technology speeded up, this process got faster. But what Ableton and one other piece of software that came out at the time, which was Sony Acid, did, it added an extra trick to this. And that was that you could grab any sample, and as long as that sample was chopped correctly, so the first downbeat was chopped to the next downbeat of the sample, then that sample would automatically time stretch to the rest of your project. So you didn't have to work it out anymore. It was automatic, and that was really, really groundbreaking. Now, Sony Acid was great at the time, but they never really built on that concept, whereas Ableton kept on adding stuff, and Ableton has now added MIDI and all that other stuff, so it's really powerful. But that concept is still something that other DAWs have tried to bring in, but I think Ableton really does it best. So let me give you an example, right? So let me go, I'm going to grab a few breakbeats, right? So there's your classic breakbeat there. Right, so this project is far too slow, so I'm going to make it 120 BPM. Right, so the original speed of this breakbeat, it doesn't actually tell you, funnily enough, 102 BPM there. So that fits in perfectly with my project tempo of 120. And if I speed up the project or slow it down, then it speeds up and slows down automatically. And that was something that was really, really new at the time. And so I could get one breakbeat at 102 BPM, drop in another breakbeat at 90 BPM, and they're automatically in time. Another one at 82 BPM. And it all fits in. So suddenly you had this ability to play all your sample libraries, because sample libraries have been around for many years, but you could now play your sample libraries, all your loops that were a different BPM before that would have been a massive pain to get in tempo, could suddenly be played together. And between those two things, that really made Ableton revolutionary. So yeah, so that's basically what made Ableton, change the world of music production, and that's why it's so strong today. So now I'm just going to have a quick tour, very quick tour around Ableton, and what I'll do for the last half an hour of this tutorial is I'll open it up for questions for you. Let me just check in on YouTube, make sure that that's all running properly while I'm here. Okay, all seems good. Go back to my Ableton here. Right, so Ableton layout. Quick 15-minute guide to where everything is, or not everything, because that would take much more than 15 minutes, but a rough idea. So up here is your area, which is kind of focused on your BPM and your time signature of your track. So the first thing you can do is you can either sync up Ableton, or sorry, the first thing on the left hand side, you can either sync up Ableton to other versions of Ableton or other link compatible applications, or I think it's just applications. I don't think any hardware is link compatible, but you can just sync it up, which means you can get other bits of software in time with Ableton. Now you can also set up Ableton to sync to MIDI clock. So if you've got drum machines or synthesizers, you can get Ableton to sync to MIDI clock, and that would say external up there. You can also tap tempo of Ableton. So your beats per minute tempo of a track is measured in beats per minute. 123 at the moment, so I can tap here just by tapping on the mouse. Tap quickly, it goes really fast. Tap slowly, it goes really slow. So that means that it's good for working out the tempo of a loop, but also if I want to sync up to someone, maybe a drummer, if I'm brave enough to sync up to a drummer or a DJ, then I can do it that way as well. And then I've got the nudge backwards and forwards, which just nudges the it nudges the tempo down a little bit and nudges the tempo up the same way as you would on a vinyl or on a CDJ or whatever, to get Ableton in time. So you can nudge it, so it's like that, nudging it backwards on the vinyl to get it in time. Then you've got your time signature. I think anyone that knows about music theory will know about time signature. If not, we're going to learn about it in a little bit. Then you've got metronome. This bit here is for if you don't have any beats laid down and you want to record audio, you'll get this noise. And that's like a guide for tempo. Here we have your global quantize. Now, people who know about music production will already know about quantizing, but this is a little bit different. This is about when your clips are played. So if my global quantize is set to 1 bar, let me turn off my metronome, then this bar will, this clip will trigger in the next bar's time. If that's set to 8 bars, it's going to wait till the next logical 8 bars till that next clip is triggered. If you see there? Same with that one. It's going to wait till the next logical 8 bars in musical terms until those clips are triggered. So you can see we're still waiting for this clip to be triggered because 8 bars hasn't passed yet. And there we go, it's just triggered now. And if we have it on less than a bar, then you can hear we can trigger stuff really, really quickly, like. Or even less. And obviously the loops will not play in perfect time if you have it on 1/32. You can get them to go out of sync. And even less if you have it on none. So that means there's no. So that's how your clips are triggered, when the quantize is for your clips being triggered. Okay, this section here is your transport section. So you've got your stop, your play and your record. You've got some song locator here, which is where you are in the arrange page. And then you've got loads of other stuff here, which is to do with recording and automation and that kind of stuff here. And then you've got looping, punch in, punch out over here. The pen here, that has a couple of functions that you'll discover later. And then you have this little keyboard thing here, which allows you to play MIDI notes in from your computer keyboard. So if I grab an instrument here, let's just put it, and I'm just going to grab that, drop that into there. If I arm that channel there, I can then play the notes in from my computer keyboard. But this is for assigning MIDI and computer keyboard as to send control signals to Ableton. We'll talk about that later. But two things that are important are your CPU usage, which is here, and your disk. If that disk light comes on, then that means that you're not reading off your disk fast enough. So you have to really watch out for that. And then you've got a little indicator here which tells you that you're receiving MIDI. That will light up yellow if you're receiving MIDI. So if I put that on there, you can see that my keyboard is then sending that MIDI. Also, you've got another one which tells you if you're sending MIDI. Right, so that's a rough guide to that top section there. Next section here is, it's important to know everything is collapsible in Ableton. So you've got these little arrows so you can collapse things as you need to. So this section here is your browser. This is where you'll find anything that you need to use in Ableton. Your synths, your effects, your sample library, everything that you need to use to make your music is in this section here. Now Ableton 10's got this favourite thing where you can put your favourite devices into your favourites here, but other than that, you've got categories at the top, which is where your sounds are stored. Now people get mixed up with this sound thing. They think samples are in there quite a lot, but actually this is not where your samples are. This is where all your presets are for your Ableton instruments. So if you want to grab a quick bass preset as an Ableton instrument, then here's the place to go. Same with your drums. This is where all your preset drums are of your Ableton instruments. Really easy place to find presets. If you're digging for presets, then this is where you go. Now instruments here is where all the instruments themselves are. So you've got all the same presets here in your instruments as you do here, but they're just laid out a bit differently, so you have to go into all your individual instruments and find your presets. So if you want to set up your own drum rack or design your own synth sound, then you go into instruments, because you can go to the synth you want and drag over a blank synth. You can't do that from sounds. If I want a blank simpler, I just drag over a blank simpler like that. Whereas in sounds, you've only got the presets. You've got audio effects there. Everything that affects audio in Ableton is called an audio effect, whether it's a signal processor or an actual traditional effect. So your compressors, your EQs, your filters, your reverbs, your delays, anything along those lines is here in your audio effect. MIDI effects, these are things that affect MIDI notes. Go into them a bit later. Max for Live. Now, Max for Live is like a third party. I think it's not even third party anymore. I think it's integrated. Its own. I don't know if it is. Anyway, that's not really important. The point is that you can design your own instruments in Max for Live if you're that way inclined and you really want to get deep and geeky about stuff. But also, there's a bunch of really cool instruments designed by other people that you can download for Max for Live as well. So if you've got Ableton Suite, Max for Live is included. Plugins. Now this is where all your third-party plugins are for Ableton. So anything made by anyone else, whether that's a soft synth or a third-party effect or anything like that, it's all here in your plugins. Clips are for your clips in your project or your packs that come with Ableton. Samples, there's another confusing thing, because samples are only the samples that are in the packs in Ableton. If you want to use your own samples, then you have to go into places down here. Now if I want to use my own samples, I've got my own sample library. I add folder here, then I can add a folder, and if I've got samples in that folder, I can then go to there and I can use them in my project. So this is where I can add my own sample library to use in Ableton. Okay, so next section, session view. We've spoken about this and the clips. These are called clips and the empty slots are called slots. You can put your clips in. Now you have two kinds of channels or tracks in Ableton. You have MIDI and you have audio. So MIDI is just data. MIDI by itself does not make any sound. If I create a MIDI track here and I put some MIDI notes in it, what I'll get out of the end of there, did I even do that? I'll put that in there. If I put, right, so that's an empty MIDI track. When I play that, let's solo that channel, you get nothing. You just get a little indicator that MIDI data is coming out of that. If I want to make that make a noise, I need to put a MIDI instrument in front of it. So if I put one of my sounds here, I can drop that in there, and that's now going to play that brass instrument, which I can control here, or I can put anything in front of there. Those same MIDI notes are going to play different instruments. So that's just data. I could put drum kit in there. It's just sending data, what notes to play when, basically. And because there's no drums on there, we're not getting any notes, but so I'm just sending data to that. Now your second kind of channel is an audio channel, and that is here. So instead of a piano roll like we get on the MIDI track, we get, so this is a MIDI track, we get a piano roll, which you see represents a piano. We get a waveform. So this is where we drop loops and samples straight into a track. So that's your two main kinds of tracks. And then here you've got a mixer and a send and return and a master channel. Now this is very much the same as you would have on an analog mixer, a DJ mixer, that kind of thing. So you've just got these tracks coming down here where the audio goes down. You've got, or your MIDI instrument is there, and then the audio comes out of that down the channel. Or if it's an audio track, the audio comes out of the clip straight into channel, and that goes into your master channel. You can send copies of it to your reverb and your delay, so like this. I can also mix it, so I can turn that down there, solo it, mute it, you know, all the kind of things you would do on a DJ mixer. Send it to my delay, send it to my reverb, and then you've got your return channels over here where you can add effects, as many, well, I think it's 12, so you can add lots of different effects on here, your reverb. So the bottom of the page here, like we said before, if it's an audio channel, it shows your audio clip. If you're clicked on the clip, or a MIDI channel, or if you're clicked on a MIDI clip, then you get your piano roll. But if you double click on the top of it, you see your instrument if it's a MIDI track, or if it's an audio channel, you don't see anything. But you can put effects in there in series. So if I want to put a reverb or a filter on that loop, so let's get an auto filter of our audio effects. I just drop that in there, and I have to make sure I've double clicked on the top of that, because this section does two things. I've got my filter there. Same with a MIDI channel. If I want to double click on the top of a MIDI channel, I can put an effect on there as well after the instrument. So that's in series after the instrument. So it can be tricky. You need to double click on the clip itself to see the MIDI. Double click on the top of the channel to see the instrument and the effects. Or on an audio track, you double click on the clip to see the audio, and you double click on the top of the channel to see the effects on that channel, if there are any. Right, so now that's session view. Now we spoke at the beginning briefly about a traditional arrangement of other sequencers. Ableton has that as well. Now, if I record this in here now, everything that I've recorded has now gone into this arrange page, and I swap between the pages by hitting that, these two buttons here, or I can hit the tab key, will do it as well. And this is the traditional arrange page, and you don't have to record in here. You can drop clips directly in here, you can copy and paste them from session view, and it has all its own clips going on in here. Now I need to press this button, that will become clearer later, but now this is where I do my more traditional arrangement. Now one thing that I want to make clear is that session view always takes precedence. So if you want to listen to this page, you can be looking at this page, but you can still be hearing stuff from session view. So you have to press that button that I just pressed. So there we go. I'm looking at this page, but I'm actually still listening to stuff from session view. That can be confusing. So I'm going to hit the button there, and now I'm listening to this page. And yeah, so we're nearly at the end. So if I hit this channel, it's important to note that these channels here in session view, what's going on in this track is shared between the arrange page and session view. Now, what isn't shared are the clips. So whatever clips are playing here are independent. So I could have a clip playing there, or I could have different audio clips on the same channel. But they're both going through the same filter, and they're both going through that same filter on the arrange page as well. So what's going on these channels is shared between the arrange page and the session view. The clips aren't necessarily shared. So they're not shared at all, in fact, because you're either listening to a clip from session view or you're listening to it from the arrange page. Now something that's really handy, the last thing I want to note is this little section here, this information section. So if I hover over anything in Ableton, it will tell me what it is. Well, I should have to hover over it. I don't know why it's been a bit weird. But yeah, so if I hover over stuff, mine is being weird now, so I'm having to click on it. But normally you just hover over it and it tells you what everything is. It gives you a little bit of information about everything. So that's really handy. Okay, right, so guys, that is my very brief introduction to Ableton. Now it's your turn. You've got about half an hour, 25 minutes-ish to ask me some questions. I just need to plug in my laptop quickly. I don't know why the power's unplugged. Oh, there we go. Let me plug this in quickly. And now it's your turn to answer some questions. So try not to be shy. Fire over some questions for me. Hello guys, come on, don't be shy. I'm sure it's the first day of the Ableton course, so or the first week of the Ableton course, so I find it very hard to believe that no one's got any questions for me. Right, so with regards to plugins, do you have a suggested way of organising them? So you're talking about third-party plugins. Um, yeah, I mean, normally they're just listed in alphabetical order in Ableton here. So we're going to my plugins there, and I've got VST and audio units, and I don't really organise them. To have them in alphabetical order is normally enough for me. And then in terms of organising them on my system, I think it's good. Right, you can either use a custom folder, which means you tell Ableton where they are, or you can use the pre-existing VST folder on your computer. So it's kind of up to you which way you go with that. But I would normally use the pre-existing one myself. So yeah, I mean, if that's what you're asking, if not, then come back to me and clarify a little bit. Yeah, so I mean, I find it better to start a track in session view, and I think that a lot of people that are self-taught in Ableton never, um, a lot of people never ever have really experienced session view because they've come from another DAW where you don't really have a good session view in there, and they end up with just like using the same mentality and using the arrange page from the beginning, and I think it's a big shame actually. So I think at least try and experience session view. I think most people find it very, very useful, and different people use it to different degrees. Some people use it for, just a musical scratch pad, whereas others, do whole tracks on it. I mean, I do my whole live show on session view and loads of hardware together, and now I don't even use a range page because I just release my tracks as live jams. Yeah. So personally, how often do I use plugins? Well, me, I'm a bit of a hardware lad, so I use hardware a lot more than I use third-party plugins. I use Machina quite a lot. So yeah, if I was to be honest, not that often. I do use them, but not. I use like the D16 stuff and a few other bits and pieces. But to be honest, not that often. If I'm being 100% honest. I have done a lot in the past, but now I've got a lot of analog synths and that kind of stuff. So I use that a lot more. Right, so Machina, you can use it as a controller with Ableton, but it's not designed as a controller with Ableton. So if you want a dedicated to work with Ableton, then Push is a lot different from using Machina with Ableton. And if you like that way of working, Push is actually really good. But I would go and experience it first. Go and have some fun with Push and see if it's what you're after before making that the dedicated, being dedicated to a purchase, because it's quite a lot of money. It's not for everyone, but a lot of people I know absolutely love Push, and others can live without it. So go and check it out. See whether it's for you. I would say try and get your hands on it. Okay, guys, look, we've still got plenty of time, so hit me with those questions, please. Right, so yes, you can change the time signature throughout the track. You can either do it in your scenes. So if you put, if I put 3/4 in a scene here, if I rename my scene like that with the Command and R, and I put 3/4, and I trigger that scene, and you can see the time signature change to 3/4 there. I can also put time signature changes in here. Sorry, I get a weird thing with Ableton while I'm right. So you can add insert time signature change there in different parts of your track there if you want. So you can do it by hitting Control in there, and then putting time signature change in there. So yeah, you can. You can also change the BPM through Master Automation here if you want to change the BPM. So yeah, you can. Everything is pretty much fluid in Ableton, to be honest. It's a powerful bit of software. There we go. So I could put a time signature change in there. I think it's not letting me because I've got it in session view. Can change the song tempo here with automation. So yeah, the answer is yes. To give you the quick answer, yes, you can change BPM, time signature, whatever you want over time. Okay, so yeah, so you may see concerning the D slow disc read led. So when will this occur? Well, if it's you'll probably see it occurring if you're trying to read samples off your hard drive. It seems to appear a lot. Also, it's got this thing where if you've got loop set in the arrange page and you're trying to trigger samples from your hard drive, it can happen. So just keep an eye out for it, basically. You'll know when it happens because you'll get the light come up and the stuff will start glitching out, basically. First time. Okay, so you've got two assignments. You have a written piece, which is right. That's your second component is a written piece, where you talk about two different methods of programming drums, and analyze the two different methods, and you also have you have to talk about the drums in your own project as well. And you have a track, which is basically where you use everything you've learned in the class, and you kind of build a track over the time of the class, or that's the idea. Yeah, so you have a couple of assignments got two assignments. One is a written piece. The other one is creating a track, a finished track. A written piece where you talk about two different methods of programming drums, and you talk about the drums in your own track and a track. Hopefully that's clearer. Right, so latency, most simply, is the time it takes your computer to process stuff. So if you play a guitar, when you hit the strings, you hear the sound because there's no processing time to that. Whereas with a computer, if you play a note on a MIDI keyboard, the electrical signal's got to go into the computer, be processed by the computer, and then sent out with electricity through the speakers. Now the electricity doesn't, going through the electrics doesn't take any time, but the processing time of the computer means that when you play something, it doesn't happen instantly. So it's a lot less now than it was, say, 20 years ago with computers. But what happens is you play a note on your keyboard and you have to wait a split second or a millisecond or a few milliseconds, however many milliseconds before the note actually happens. So that's what latency is. It's the time that your computer takes to process something. Now in music, timing is really, really important. So, if you're playing an instrument, you expect the sound to come out instantly. Whereas on a computer, it can take a little bit of time. And we're talking milliseconds, like I said. But it's enough to kind of put you off if you're playing something live. So that's what latency is. Hopefully that's a little bit clearer. Right, so you can't use third-party plugins for our first assignment. No, you can't. You have to use all Ableton plugins, but you can use third-party samples. People get confused. So you can sample things. You can use third-party. If you want to sample a third-party plugin, that's cool as well. If you want to convert it to audio and chop it up, that's cool as well. So there's ways around it, and depending on what course you're doing, because there's lots of different courses with all the modules, then yeah, if you're doing sound design, then you're going to look at some third-party, quite a lot of third-party instruments and plugins and effects to design sounds. So yeah, you will look at other third-party plugins later on in the course if you're doing the right modules, basically. Yeah, there is. Without a plugin, right? So Ableton has its own instruments, has its own samplers, has its own synthesizers. It has two samplers. It has subtractive synthesis, FM synthesis, wavetable synthesis. Physical modeling synthesizers. So you get a lot of plugins within Ableton that are part of Ableton software. So you can use them, they're fine. Samplers, fine. But what you can't use is stuff made by other companies inside Ableton for your projects anyway. Obviously, you're welcome to use them in your own time, but you can't use them for your final project, your assignment. Do you use right? So let's get this clear, right? So your the set reverbs and delays um, from audio. Right. So let's get this clear. Like, so your reverbs and your delays are always audio effects. So the sends and returns. If I go to the return channel here, that has got an audio effect on it already. It's got the reverb on it. I can change that. I can grab my audio effect. I can put any effect from here into there. I can put a delay in there, into my audio effect there. I can put as many as I want in my return. So all the return is an extra channel that is just a return channel for putting effects through. So there's two ways of using effects basically, and that's what you should be thinking about. You could use effects in series, which means you use them on the end of your channel. So you put a delay on the end of your channel there, and you can use them in parallel, which means you use them on a return, and you send a copy of your channel to the effects there. So I use both, depending on what I'm trying to do. I will use both, and different things work for different situations, and you normally use certain effects on a channel. For example, an auto filter you're going to want to use in series, whereas a delay you could use in series or parallel, but quite often you'd use it in parallel, but you could use it in series as well. So there's no real clear-cut answer. The answer is I use both sends and returns and effects in series on the channel as well. Okay, so right. Is it possible to record the output of a MIDI clip to an audio clip? Yeah, exactly. You can do that. That's no problem. There's several ways of doing it. We're going to look at that a lot, a little bit later in the course. There's a few ways of doing that. So yeah, you can, no problem. Does the order of the order of the effects matter? Yes, it matters massively. So if you have a reverb for a delay, then you're delaying the reverb. If you have a filter before a delay unit, then you're going to get a delay of what's coming out of the filter. If you put the filter after, you're going to be filtering the delayed effect. So what you get is things sound very different depending on the order. So you can experiment with different orders, and there's not always a right way of doing things. It's just what you think sounds best, and that's why creatively it can be a lot of fun using things in different orders and stuff like that. So yes, it does matter massively. Okay guys, so we've got 3 minutes left, so we've got time for another quick answer or two. Right, so bass lines, do you really need to double them? No, you don't need to double them. You can double up and layer sounds. Um, it depends on the bass line again. Um, you know, it's again, there's like so many different ways of making a bass line, so many different bits of soft synths. So many different ways of making a bass line that is never one way of doing anything really. And that's the beauty of music production is that there's many ways of making a bass line. Sometimes you can layer them to make them sound better. Sometimes you don't have to. You know, so it's not that simple that you have to do it. Depends on your sound and your style and the sounds you've got in the first place and all that kind of stuff. So no, you don't need to. Although doubling them, layering them can be good fun, and it is something that you can do, and it can get good results. So that's it, guys. That's time for me to say goodbye, and really great to meet you all actually. And I'm looking forward to working with you on the course. So hopefully you learned some stuff from today. So peace out, people, and I will catch up with you again soon in our one-to-ones and next week's masterclass. Peace.